You know, every December, one guy just takes over everything. But what if I told you that behind that big white beard and the red suit, there's this incredible story? A story about saints and soldiers and even salesmen. It's way more wild than you think. So let's dive in and unwrap the secret history of Santa Claus. Oh yeah, you know this face. Who doesn't? He's jolly, he's plump, he's got that twinkle in his eye. I mean, he is Christmas cheer, right? The magical guy from the North Pole who brings presents to kids all over the world. But here's the thing. That version of him, it's actually pretty new. His real story, the one we're going to get into, is this epic 1,700-year journey. And it doesn't start at the North Pole. Nope. It starts on the warm coast of the Mediterranean and ends up, of all places, in New York City. And check out this contrast. It's just incredible. The icon we love today is this happy-go-lucky guy from the North Pole. The original? He was a pretty stern, skinny bishop from Turkey, way back in the 4th century. So you gotta ask, how in the world did we get from that guy to this guy? Okay, so our story kicks off not in a snowy workshop, but under the sunny skies of the Mediterranean. And it all starts with a man who would go on to become one of the most beloved saints in all of history. All right, let's meet the man himself, St. Nicholas of Myra. We're talking way back, around 280 AD. He was a Greek bishop in what's now modern-day Turkey, and he was known for two big things. First, he was super passionate about defending his faith. And second, he was just incredibly generous, especially when he thought nobody was watching. So Nicholas came from a rich family, and he used all that inherited money to help out the poor and the sick. After he died on December 6th, his legend just started to grow and grow. And then, get this, in the 11th century, his bones, his relics, were moved to Italy. And that's when his fame just exploded all over Europe. His feast day, December 6th, became the original day for giving gifts to kids. And this, right here, this is the story that started it all, the legend of the three dowries. See, there was this poor man who had 3 daughters, and he couldn't afford to get them married. They were facing a really terrible fate. So Nicholas, in secret, at night, tossed 3 bags of gold into their house. And the legend says the gold just happened to land in some stockings that were hanging by the fire to dry. And bam! Right there, you've got it. The secret gift giver, the chimney, the stockings, it all comes from this one story. So as the story of St. Nicholas traveled across Europe, it started to change. It kind of morphed. It blended with local myths and legends, and even got caught up in big religious shifts. And the result was this whole cast of different characters, all bringing gifts in the winter. Okay, so look at how different he became. In the Netherlands, he stayed pretty close to the original, a tall bishop they called Sinterklaas. But in England, he became Father Christmas, who was more about partying and feasting than presents, and he often wore green. Then, over in Germany, you have Martin Luther during the Reformation. He wasn't big on saints, so he introduced a new gift bringer, the Christkind, this angelic Christ child figure. So you've got all these different versions floating around, and they're all about to collide. And where do they all meet? Well, it all happens in one place, New York City, back in the 1800s. This is the melting pot, literally, where that stern saint and all those different European folk heroes got mashed together and totally reinvented into the Santa Claus we all know. He's basically an American invention. And this whole transformation, you can pretty much thank 3 guys for it. First up, the writer Washington Irving. He took that stern saint and turned him into a jolly, pipe-smoking Dutchman. Next, Clement Clark Moore wrote that super famous poem, you know the one, and basically created the entire Santa mythology, the sleigh, the 8 reindeer with all their names, the whole Christmas Eve delivery thing. And finally, a cartoonist named Thomas Nast came along and gave him his iconic look. I mean, Moore's poem, "'Twas the Night Before Christmas," it was a complete game changer. It took the old serious bishop and swapped him out for a right jolly old elf. That line right there tells you everything. He's not some scary figure judging you anymore. Suddenly, he's this magical, happy creature. And then there's Thomas Nast. And this part of the story is truly wild. His first drawings of Santa? They were literally propaganda for the Union Army during the Civil War. I'm serious. This drawing from 1863 shows Santa wearing the stars and stripes, hanging out with Union soldiers. He was being used as a symbol for the North's cause. How crazy is that? So over the next 20 years or so, Nast kept drawing Santa. He's the one who gave him the red suit, the workshop at the North Pole, and that all-important list of naughty and nice kids.
But let's talk about that red suit for a second, because it leads us to one of the biggest myths in the history of advertising. I'm sure you've heard this one before. Coca-Cola invented the modern Santa Claus. That they're the ones who put him in the red suit, it's a fantastic story, but it's just not true. Not at all.
Okay, so here's the real story. Santa was showing up in red suits, like in those Thomas Nast drawings, a good 50 years before any Coca-Cola ads. So what did Coke do? Well, starting in 1931, they hired an artist named Haddon Sundblom, and his version of Santa was super warm, grandfatherly, really human. And because their ad campaigns were so huge and ran for so long, they basically made that image the standard all around the world. So they didn't invent the look, but boy, did they cement it.
So at this point, the American Santa Claus is pretty much fully formed. He's got the personality, he's got the mythology, he's got the look. He's ready to take on the world. But he needed one last, very important member of his team.
And in 1939, with the world on the edge of World War II, a new star was born, the ninth reindeer, the most famous reindeer of all.
And yeah, just like everything else in this story, Rudolph's origins are pretty surprising. He wasn't some ancient myth. He was a marketing gimmick. He was created by a copywriter for a department store, Montgomery Ward, for a promotional booklet they were giving away. It was all about getting people into the store to shop during the Great Depression.
But even as this American Santa became a global superstar, he didn't just wipe out all the local traditions. Take Russia, for example. They still have their traditional guy, Ded Moroz, which means Grandfather Frost. He's taller, skinnier, and he delivers gifts on New Year's Eve. It just goes to show you that sometimes global culture doesn't replace local traditions, it just kind of lives alongside them.
So when you boil it all down, what is Santa Claus? He's really the perfect example of something we call a cultural composite. He's not one thing. He's a mashup of a real saint from history, old European folklore, some clever American writing, political cartoons, and a whole lot of 20th century advertising.
Which kind of brings us to the big question, right? After this wild 17th century journey of evolution, who is Santa Claus today? Is he a saint, a folk hero, or maybe the world's greatest salesman? And the really cool thing is, the answer is, yep, he's all of them.